everyone and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to go over the books that I read in April. I had a strong start to the month, but then I got caught up in one book that really slowed me down, so that just kind of killed the rest of the month. So it was a strange reading month, we'll say. But yeah, let's just get right into it. I started the reading month reading Jules Verne, Les Tribulations d'un Chinois en Chine, which is one of the book in his big adventure series. And I absolutely love this. I really love this. I entered it with hesitation because, considering it's a French man writing about a Chinese man in this particular time period, I was afraid that it was going to be like filled with stereotypes and derogatory words and things like that. But I actually think it did a really good job in avoiding those things. Jules Verne has not been perfect in other books that I've read about him. He's had characters who have black slaves, and they're definitely not treated very well. But I think he did this one good. He did this one quite well. The only thing to take it into consideration if you're going to read this book in English is that the English title is The Tribulations of a Chinaman in China, and the use of the word Chinaman is definitely I'm not gonna say, not kind of, it's frowned upon in this day and age. So that's something you would have to take in consideration if you're reading the English translation. But the original French just says The Tribulations of a Chinese Man in China. I mean, it's basically a typical Jules Verne story, but that takes place in China. And I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I went in it absolutely not knowing anything about the plot, because the editions that I have from 1966, these old mass paperback editions, don't have any blurb, they don't have any synopsis whatsoever. So usually when I pick up a Jules Verne book, it's because I just want to pick up an adventure book, and I know that whatever I pick up, I'm gonna have a pretty good time. And this was definitely the case with that. Basically, the story is of our main character, and I believe his name was Kunfo, I think. Because I read this basically because I read this about 6 weeks ago. The character names are going to escape me, but it's about our main character, who is a very rich aristocrat and has basically everything he could want in life. But because of that, he's very bored in his life, and when a misfortune falls upon him, he decides he wants to end his life. But he does it under the caveat that he wants his friend, who is a philosopher, sage, wise man, to kill him, and basically says, I give you the permission to kill me, and you have to do it within this date, and then I will write a suicide letter to where you will not be blamed for my death, basically. And so it starts off this grand adventure, because our main character, of course, ends up deciding that he doesn't want to die, he wants to live. But before that, he has taken out a life insurance policy. His potential murderer will benefit upon his death, and then the potential murderer has now escaped, disappeared. We don't know where he's gone. So our main character, our aristocrat friend, has to travel China along with two Americans who are employed by the insurance company to make sure that he does not die before a certain date, so that they don't lose about $200,000. So it's a fantastic adventure story. I absolutely loved it. I love the creativity that Jules Verne has in this book. I love his vision of China, and yeah, this was just super fun. Really happy with this one. I definitely would recommend it. Next, I read a book that Laura and Manga from Reading with Manga will be very happy with. And that is because I read the very first book of the Rougon Manga series by Zola, which the first book being La Fortune des Rougon. I feel like the English translation keeps the original French title, as it did with the book Boubouille and Germinal. So I think the English translation does keep the original French title, but this was so good. Oh my gosh. So the thing about this the Rougon Manga cycle is that I have already read Boubouille, and I have already read Le Bonheur des Dames. So I've already read those two. But reading this book, so let me explain. The Rougon Macquart series is a 20-book series that Zola wrote that follows two branches of a family within the Second Empire in France. And so you have the Rougon side of the family and you have the Macquart side of the family. And basically the very first book follows the beginnings of this family. It follows Adeline, who is basically the matriarch of the entire family, and then her first son Rougon, and then her two bastard children who are on the Macquart side, and how her main child Rougon basically steals the family fortune to bring himself up in society. And that is going to be the basis for the entire rest of the series. And I have to say that now that I've read this first book, it puts the other two books I've read in such a major like perspective that I did not have before, and it's just making me re-see the entire family in a whole new way. Because actually the characters have very much a different personality than I thought I did. And just reading how they came to be, how it all starts, totally changes everything. So if you're interested in starting this cycle and you don't know where to begin, I do suggest reading the first one. It's often said you don't have to read the series in order because Zola definitely didn't write them in order, but there is a recommended reading order that Zola said, you know, if you do want to read it in more or less in an order, you could read in this order. But yeah, I highly recommend reading the first one before reading any of the others, because it definitely puts the whole family in perspective. Sorry I keep touching my hair. It's like I washed it, but I didn't straighten it. So this is like my natural curl, and this is the rest of my straight firm, and it's not blending together, and it's really, really annoying me. So I really apologize that I keep touching my hair, but that's let me be vain for this video. Let me be vain. But yeah, I mean, this book was just incredibly fantastic. Zola's writing is superb, so beautiful. There are so many moments here that are just absolutely fantastic, cruel, liberating. Just it gives you an insight on it's so good. I mean, Zola, I think he spends like 40-50 pages on just one scene about how two characters meet each other, and it's mind-boggling how beautiful he can make such a long scene be without you getting tired at all. It's just the way he describes nature and the interactions between people, and then the conversations and the way we show our emotions through movement and body language, and it's just absolutely fantastic. This was just so good, and the ending is so cruel. It's amazing. It's so good. It's so good. I'm just gonna say now, I am not committing to reading the whole Rougon Macquart series in a year or 2 years or anything like that. I know that would make amazing booktube content, but it's not gonna happen. I'm not making that commitment. I'm gonna read them at my pace. And that's just how it's gonna be. But yeah, this was gorgeous. Reading it though, it did make me think of the very famous question that like readers get asked, or people get asked in general, but readers, their version is, if you could have dinner with any author, living or dead, who would it be? For me, it would not be Zola. It would not be Zola. And why is that? It's because the way he describes characters, he is so mean. Like I just know that if I went to a dinner party with him, the very next day he would write about me in a book, and he would describe every single like little detail about me that I don't like, and that I didn't even know I don't like about myself. Like I would just be flabbergasted by how he analyzes my personality, and I don't think I could take it. I don't think I could deal with it. So I would not have dinner with Zola. But yeah, fantastic. Definitely read the first book of this series as your first book, as your introduction to the series, because it's just so good, so good. So here is where my reading took a dive. So I started reading L'affaire Calas et autres affaires, Traite sur la tolérance by Voltaire, and this is fantastic. This is so good. It's amazing. So Voltaire is a famous philosopher in France. This is the first time I read him. And basically what this is that there was a family, the Calas family, where the mother, father, their 2 sons, and the son's friend all have dinner together one night. One of the sons goes downstairs, the other 4 continue their party upstairs, and then when it's time for the friend to go home, they walk him out, and at that point they discover that their son is dead. And it's been considered the fact that he was murdered. But it turns out it was actually a suicide. And the family consistently state it was a suicide, we have nothing to do with this. But the justice system goes after them anyway, and they execute the father for patricide. And it became this huge scandal because everyone was saying that the justice system had not served any justice whatsoever. And it made no sense because the family had been together the entire time that night. So they're either all of them are guilty or none of them are guilty. So the fact that they just executed the father was this big issue. And the background and the reason people think this happened is that it was rumored, incorrectly, that the son that was supposedly murdered was murdered because he was going to convert to Catholicism while this family was Protestant. And the things like that made no sense because another child of theirs had already converted to Christianity, Catholicism, and they had no issue with that. Even their servant, who had been with them for about 20 years, was also a Catholic, and they had no issue with her whatsoever. So the idea that they would murder their child because it was converting to Catholicism was this incredible, absurd concept. And Voltaire picks up on this case to give his treatise on this concept of tolerance, and how he is basically saying that the Catholic Church is not tolerant. It is not tolerant of other religions. While other religions are tolerant of Catholicism, Catholicism is not tolerant of other religions, and because of that, they never serve justice with an open mind and with an actual fair mind. So this was absolutely fantastic. But I did not finish this, and the reason I didn't finish this is because, for some reason, and I think what it is I wanted to read this at home and I wanted another book to read at work. And so to do that, I picked up Un roi sans divertissement by Giono. And this book killed me, but not in a bad way. It's the thing is I was reading it and I was enjoying it, but the writing was so different. I kept having to reread pages and chapters and go back and revisit what I had just read. And it's not that it's a difficult writing style, but sometimes your brain just does not want to make that switch. And so because of that, I was really having trouble processing the information that I was receiving. And so I thought, okay, well, so that my brain can fully make the switch, I'll put this down temporarily and fully read this one. And once I read this in its entirety, I'll go back to this. And what happened is I got really stuck on this book. Not because I disliked it, actually I was really enjoying it, but the fact that I was spending so much time reading the same pages over and over again it just really, really, really slowed me down. So I ended up not finishing this either. And so basically what's going to happen is I'm going to come back to this one, and I think I'm going to come back to it in the winter, which will suit the setting a lot better. And then I'll have to come back to this one again once my motivation to go back to reading French comes back. So it's really unfortunate because the Voltaire was really, really good, and I really want to get back to this one. And even this, I do want to see what happens with this. So I'm not going to talk about the plot of this until I actually read it, hopefully later in the year. But yeah, so this really slowed me down. So I only had 2 days left in the month, and I'm like, well, I'd like to read something. I've only technically read 2 books this month. So then I picked up Yuri Ida's short novella, Signs Preceding the End of the World, which if you guys watched my book haul where I hauled this book, even though I don't do 5-star ratings, I don't do ratings on this channel. If I were to, I predicted that this would be a 5-star. Unfortunately, I was very disappointed with this book. Basically, what is this book? It's about our character Makina, who is tasked by her mother to send a message to her brother who is in the United States. and she basically gets the help of the drug cartel to help her cross the border, and the cartel also gives a message for her to pass on once she crosses the border. So it's kind of like a trade. We'll help you if you help us. And I was just so disappointed because it's a story I already know. And the thing is that that's okay, but it was told in a way that wasn't new. There was nothing different. There was nothing special about this book. It's just, and the whole concept about the messages, there's really no significance to the messages. It's like she does her task and it's like, okay, well, that's done. You know, it's just like there's not really, yeah, there are some dangerous parts that happen, but there was no sense of tension for me. There was no sense of danger for me. It just felt like, okay, yeah, this has to happen for you to get here. It just felt like a step within the process. So I didn't get anything out of this, which was frustrating because all the blurbs on the back are saying it's a masterpiece, it's haunting, it's moving. One person, they write, Yuri Ida must be 1,000 years old. He must have traveled to hell and heaven and back again. He must have once been a girl, an animal, a rock, a boy, and a woman. Nothing else explains the vastness of his understanding. I mean, that's some high praise, and I just did not get that. I was just like, anyone, I mean, no, not anyone could write this. I'm not a writer, I cannot write this, but like, the vastness of his understanding, not so much. So seeing that Yuri Ida is Mexico's greatest novelist, I don't agree with that. I didn't see it. But I have to say that the reason that this is supposed to be as good as people say it is because of the writing. And apparently his writing is supposed to be quite lyrical. His command and manipulation of the language is supposed to be quite impressive. And the thing is, I don't think the English translation did that justice. And I don't want to be mean to the translator, who has, there is a translator's note at the end, and the translator does talk about the use of certain words over other words and how they chose the English equivalents. But I just didn't get that feel of a beautiful language when I read this book. So unfortunately, this was disappointing for me. I think if I were to read another book by Yuri Ida, I will read it in the original Spanish to see if that's the real issue behind this book. So that I don't finish the book with the disappointment, I used my very last day to read something I knew that I was obviously going to love, and that is the Manga volume 15 of Yotsubato, which is joy and innocence and heartwarming moments in one tiny little volume that's filled with art, and that's filled with like beautiful and cute art and just characters who are so sympathetic, and it's funny and it's joyful, and it just reminds you of all those little moments in your own childhood where everything was a discovery, everything was something that led to something new that you had never experienced before. And so reading this was a real joy, and you can see me snickering and laughing in my blog where I read this. So yeah, I'm glad that I was at least able to finish the month with this, because Yotsubato always brings a smile to my face. It's just so I just love this. So yeah, that's what I ended up reading in the month of April, kind of a little bit everywhere. I did actually read, the Jules Verne that I loved, the Zola that I loved, the Yotsubato that I loved. So I did actually read very good books. It's just unfortunate that middle part of the month turned into what it turned into be. So anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next vlog, which is a vlog of the very first book that I read in May. So I will see you there. Bye!